right. Hey.
Hey.
Well, we're going to do something a little different than we did last time. I think this last time we started off with a little bit of a script that was edited and polished and kind of had some of the essential disclaimers about trigger warnings because of discussions of abuse and so forth, as well as kind of an introduction of who we were and what this podcast was about and so forth. This time we're just kind of jump into it, in part because this is a really impromptu recording session. We were planning on kind of giving it a rest before recording the next episode, but I think we were both so heavily impacted by Josh Duggar's bond hearing yesterday that we're pretty much talking through this stuff in real time anyways. And we thought we might as well just sit down in front of a mic and record it while we're having these thoughts. In some ways, maybe that'll help us have some quiet time over the next couple of weeks, because we'll have, been able to kind of put this to rest in our own minds and gotten some thoughts out there and, be able to move on to some other things. Because yesterday it was just a sledgehammer.
Yeah.
I mean, it was for me. My thing is that I have trouble like empathizing off of generalities. So, if somebody comes up to me and says, "Hey, there's a car wreck outside," I'll process that it's a car wreck. I'll process that it's bad, but I'm not going to be like devastated probably until I see the car wreck. Mm-hmm. It's not, I don't get those pangs of sharp emotion until I really see the details for some reason.
Understand exactly what was going on. Yeah.
And that's very much just my MO. So I really didn't process what Josh had done until the bond hearing. Emotionally. Logically, I knew. Logically, nothing was a surprise. Mm-hmm. Emotionally, that was a 360 for me. That was shocking.
Yeah.
I'm sure that if you guys have read anything that I've posted or listened to the past episode, you know that I generally want understanding and sensitivity in the way that I talk about things. I'm very careful to say that, for example, I don't want Josh, my former friend, to be harmed in any way. I don't want him to experience trauma himself, even as a result of the horrible things that he's done. I want just simple removal for the sake of the safety of people around him. I'm not really looking for violence or, nasty stuff. And I'm always so careful to be kind of correct in the way that I approach these things and careful. And I can tell you yesterday, at the peak of reading descriptions, that pretty much all went out the window for me. And I mean, just to be perfectly frank and to be perfectly honest, I think I told you this. It was like, okay, this is not true logically. What I'm about to say is not true. This isn't actually what I want. This is just how I feel. But how I feel is that I want to watch Josh get run over by a truck. I am so angry. Mm-hmm. And disturbed. And I can tell you I had yesterday, my feeling was I don't want to even just say anything that would humanize him. I knew him as a teen. He was my friend. I know parts of him that could be sympathetic, right? I know I've seen him cry. I've seen all these human things in him. I've thought about him. I've tried to think through, why did he do this? Why did he do that? And yesterday, I can tell you, I did not give two it's about anything related to why.
Yeah.
And was just like, just get him out of here.
Mm-hmm.
I was pretty disappointed that he was released.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm still processing that. I know that there are legal hurdles. I know that there's like burdens of proof and tests and things that have to be overcome in order to do things in the legal system, especially on the presumption of innocence and so forth. But I'm not the legal system. I know him. I know I don't have to prove anything to myself. I know him. And after reading these descriptions, I knew, like, in my heart, like, this is him. Like, this is him. There's no conspiracy. There's no misunderstanding. Like, I know that in my heart. But the legal system doesn't yet. And it's just really painful to see this happen. And it's also really painful to just, if I know it's not the same judge that does the same ruling in every case, but there's just such a massive inconsistency between how, Mr. TV dude is treated versus how other people are treated. And it just seems like it's just so, these guys in this position are so slippery. Like, you can't nail them down. I'm like, why is this so hard?
Yeah. Well, and there's a few different layers to this. There's the layer of he's a prominent celebrity TV figure. And so there's that. There's also the promising young man angle that we've seen in the last few years play out at least a couple different times in, specifically sexual assault cases where, a guy's just given just a joke of a sentence because, well, he has so much promise and he's going to do this. We don't want to ruin his whole life. And, I feel like that's what happened with Josh.
Yeah.
During his teen years and up until this point has been like, well, it's just a little detour that he's on, but he's, at his core, he has so much potential and so much promise. And
he's a promising young man, right?
Yeah, we aren't going to let this sideline him,
Yeah.
And it's
from
just
God's destiny for him. I've never seen somebody so infused with destiny as Josh Duggar. In some ways, he was just too big to fail. And it hurts to even see that still going on in light of such obvious and blatant, pathologically evil stuff. It really just rattles you to your core. And, what's funny is I've read things along these lines about people I didn't know, and they're kind of just characters out in the world, that aren't in your life at all, but like they're just out in the world, and so they don't hit you the same way. But I can tell you, him being my former friend and a person that was in my life is absolutely just rattling my brain.
Yeah.
So this is rough. And I also struggle a little bit too with being so descriptive about this and being so like, oh, I feel bad. And oh, this made me feel bad. And I'm sad. I had a rough day yesterday. And I'm also conscious of the fact that like, that means nothing because who was really having bad days yesterday, right?
Yeah.
And I will not speculate about further victims, especially in the age range of the material he was consuming. Not gonna do it. That's not for a podcast. That's not for this. But with that said, the heart is just filled with worry and anguish and everything else. About victims, and one wonders if all of his victims have been identified across all of his years of operating. And they are the ones who really deserve the empathy and the support. And, you know, like, I'm pretty much just an ex-friend voluntarily looking at Reddit, having a little bit of a rough afternoon in a day over this stuff, but like, you know, the enormity of the impact that he's had on his victims just really it's a lot to fathom. It's a lot to think about. Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy. I think I had like maybe two other things to kind of touch on before we jump into the journal, which is, of course, the main theme of this podcast. Is we're going over my journal from 2004, 2006, around the time when I knew the Duggars and was going to church with them. And there's just a lot of thoughts and perspectives in this journal about what it was like for me to be undiagnosed autistic at the time, and some of the struggles I was having just socially and with kind of my literal interpretations of all the stuff I was being taught. So we'll jump into that. But first, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the answers that I've given in the AMA and the Q&As online, and just kind of like pondering the way that they've spread out. Yeah. And how it's kind of funny to see that. You know, it's funny to see this, and I'm learning to be like more mindful of my honest answers. So that's a trait of mine, is I'm very honest and have to think hard about holding back or whatever. I'm not naturally that way. And, you know, one of the answers that I gave was, somebody asked about impressions of Jim Bob's dad, who has passed. And the truth is, like, I didn't know anything concrete about him. I think I'd heard a couple of things just reputation wise, which were probably the same things that the person who's asking these questions had thought and felt. And, you know, I just sort of was like, yeah, I've thought and felt the same things. And also here's a couple of anecdotes I've heard from friends growing up. But honestly, I didn't know him. He was always a background character in my interactions with the Duggars. And, you know, it was almost the fact that I didn't know him, and almost the fact that I didn't see him a lot. And when I did, it was very standoffish, that kind of gave me those impressions.
Standoffish between
their family and
him. Okay.
Right. It was very tense. And I don't think it's my place to try to break down the situation. You know, this isn't a episode of some Marvel show where we're all speculating about who the villain is and Mephisto and all that. Like, it's very easy to take real life people and treat them like they're fictional characters in a TV show and speculate unfairly about stuff like this. And I think, given the weight and the seriousness of what Josh has been up to and what he's being charged with and so forth, tying him back to Jim Bob's dad, I think is a mistake. And I wish I had been more careful in my answers about that sort of thing, because even though I answered honestly, I stand by everything I said, you know, as honest, literal answers. You know, I don't really like seeing threads and spin-off theories and posts about, like, hey, so Jim Bob Duggar's dad is a creep, or I can't believe, you know, he's probably responsible for you know, Josh's origin story. And, you know, yes, there was this sins of the fathers thing that was taught in church, where Jim Bob would say, I picked up this from my dad, and Josh has picked up this from me. And he never really bared his soul about details there. That was a religious thing that he was teaching in church, right? I don't think that should be read too much into either without facts. And the fact is, just because there's a tense relationship there doesn't mean that Jim Bob's dad is in the wrong. You know, I'll remind people that this is a very conservative family. And, you know, Jim Bob's dad could easily be somebody who's like, hey, how come your kids aren't dating? Or
Yeah.
Jim Bob, how come your boys aren't allowed to go out there like normal boys and do normal boy things?
Mhm.
And, Jim Bob and Michelle are just like, hey, well, how about this? How about we, cut you off a little bit and push you to the outside and talk about how you're an alcoholic in interviews, in
Mhm.
books.
Well, I mean, I'll just say from my own experience, like, one of my grandparents was a different religion,
Mhm.
Jehovah's Witness specifically. And so there was a lot of, like, oh, you can't talk alone to any of the kids because you're going to try to,
Yeah. Proselytize in a way that we don't agree with.
Yes.
I had a similar experience. So I had two sets of grandparents, one of them by blood and the other was his wife that he had married who, she wasn't my actual like blood grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a complicated family situation. I'm not going to break it all down. It's not really the point here, but in that situation, they were secular. They weren't Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they questioned things like, how come your kids aren't dating yet? They're teens, whatever. And Grandpa would enjoy a cigar. He had beer in his RV fridge. I mean, stuff like that. And I can tell you, my parents held us back big time and held him at length,
Mm-hmm.
at arm's length. And, if someone was to speculate on us the same way that they're speculating about Jim Bob's dad, you could easily go, what was going on there? Was he a bad guy? Was he this? Was he that?
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't think it's fair. And, if something comes out, if Josh says, maybe from prison, Ted Bundy style, this is the reason why I'm me, and here's all the stuff that I hate, and here's who I'm pissed off at, and here's what happened, and,
Mm-hmm.
X, Y, and Z, then, people can make a decision about whether they believe him or not.
Yeah.
And those concrete facts will be out there, but
Yes.
that'll be straight from the horse's mouth. That's
Yeah.
not going to be people speculating online.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's my rant on that. That's what I've been feeling anyways, since seeing this. Overall, I try to be very accurate and balanced
Mm-hmm.
in what I share and honest. But, that was worth clarifying, I think.
Yeah.
What else? We did get a comment about our stance towards Christianity.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
As an overall religion, and
We were
whether
actually talking about that earlier this morning. Kind of.
yeah,
Yeah.
whether we lumped kind of Christianity broadly in with the things that we're really criticizing.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that, because some of the things that we were talking about in the last episode were related to doctrine.
Yeah, doctrine,
like
popular.
heaven.
Yeah.
And those aren't things that just fundamentalists talk about.
Yeah.
Like living with an eternal perspective is kind of a Christian doctrine. And I think that the angle that we were approaching it at was taking that doctrine and using it as a tool for abuse.
Yeah, as a weapon.
Yeah, and using it as a way to confuse victims,
Mm-hmm.
as a way to justify yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and to basically just be a bad actor,
Yeah.
and then hide behind it. It's not us saying that Christianity and all of its, things are the target. We have our feelings about religion, and we have our feelings about Christianity as a whole.
Yeah.
But, I think I mentioned this in a comment that I made online at one point. Some of the people that helped me most when I was getting out of this whole fundamentalist thing
Mm-hmm.
were Christians.
Yep.
I remember the man who first demonstrated to me what it was like to treat gay people, lesbians, so forth, as human beings was a Christian man who went to church. He read his Bible, and he was a normal guy. He wasn't a cultist. He wasn't trying to get anybody into his weird little commune and set himself up as a patriarch with power.
Mm-hmm.
He was a guy. He was just a guy. And he believed some things. He followed certain religion. He went to church, and he demonstrated kindness and kind of human equality to these people in front of me, like gay and lesbian people in front of me. And I don't know if he biblically had thoughts of like, well, technically it's not, this is sin. I don't know. I don't know what he thought was sin, what he didn't think was sin. What mattered to me was the way that he treated people and the way that he demonstrated that to me. And because he was somebody that I kind of didn't have a wall up on, because he wasn't part of the world, he was part of God's family to me.
Yeah.
I trusted him and I listened and I went, oh, wow, this is an option. This is a way that you could do it.
Yeah.
And it really made me think about the fact that there's nothing in the Bible. I mean, the Bible, I'll take that back. The Bible does sometimes prioritize some sins over others, but like the obsession that people have with like LGBTQ plus people, for example, in fundamentalist circles, there's really not like an entire book of the Bible that's like, go after these guys. I think there's some parts of the Pauline epistles that are pretty anti-gay. I think there's some parts of the Old Testament that are pretty anti-gay, but it's not like it's core to your message of salvation in Jesus.
Yeah, and we could have a whole discussion about Paul and how problematic a lot of his teachings are. And the fact that that's kind of what most, especially fundamentalists, are much more like Paulites than they are, Jesus followers. It's very it's very focused on the rules and what a woman should and shouldn't do, when she should and shouldn't speak, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, and it's funny because one of the main, I've just been seeing this so much lately, is that if you want to know what someone's problems are, like listen to what they rant against. Yes, exactly. Yeah. What they rail against. And what they railed against in church, in the fundamentalist churches that I grew up in, was cherry picking and people who are buffet Christians and who like just pick and choose their favorite parts of the Bible. And when you really look at it, that's exactly what they're doing. They're doctrinally, going in and saying, patriarchy is so important to me. Let me go grab all these things. Whereas you have a choice. You have a choice to look at the Bible and say, those are outdated cultural norms of the day and of the setting when this was written, and this is not right. And there's a message behind and beneath and around and through all of it. But, we're going to say that this was the human element of the Bible, not the God element, and we're going to not follow it. And that's how some people think. And other people just simply use that stuff to weaponize their own perspectives and say that I'm just doing it because the Bible told me so.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we could do a whole probably 2-hour rant just about this topic alone. But I did just kind of want to say in summary, no, we are not going against all Christians. This is not some sort of, I'm bitter against all religions activity.
Some of the people I look up to most in my life are Christians. And like, I think people can have like a healthy relationship with God in a Christian setting.
Yeah.
But along with that, especially with the institutionalized or institutional aspect, is a lot of toxicity, a lot of manipulation, and a lot of weaponization of teachings that are just used to control people. And that's what we have a problem with.
Yeah. Well said. Exactly. That's at the end of the day what we're going after here. This isn't just about soul bearing. This isn't a tell-all. This is a very focused thing where I've had years of pent-up frustration over the fact that the narrative in the media and in public about the Duggars, about fundamentalism, is just really cleaned up and whitewashed and doesn't match the messy reality. And I just hope to use my position as somebody who has firsthand knowledge and credibility in that area to just kind of dispel some of those myths.
Yeah.
That's it. At the end of the day, when I've done that, let's hang up the hat and just go live life like normal. That's the only goal here. So if you're a Christian who is listening to this and outraged at behaviors of the Duggars, of fundamentalism, of abuse, of trauma, and you still hold on to your faith, you're still a Christian, you're following your spiritual path, nothing we're saying should be a threat to you. And if it is, I apologize. It's definitely not our intention at all. So with that, should we dive into the journal?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, this problem doesn't start or end with the Duggars. It's the movement in general. It's these ideologies in general. And, we both have experience in these settings. And, gosh, if we were able to make some difference, it would mean a lot.
Mm-hmm. It would be everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, once we get into this, we'll find some levity and some breaks from the heaviness of this, introduction. But there's really no way to avoid the heaviness. It's just a bad time all around. So have a entry here from, I think, April 24th or 25th. And it says, Dear Journal, I think that today is the 24th or 25th. I'm not sure. It is Sunday, however. I woke up at about 7:30 a.m. feeling rested, like you do when you sleep in. I was tired from yesterday. Yesterday, we mowed and weed-eated all day, so I was pooped. I got up ready for church at Bible Grace Fellowship, which is the Duggars church. That's their home church. That's what they called it. I hadn't been there in 2 weeks, so I am looking forward to catching up. My brother soon told me that we were going to go visit, removing the names, basically an elderly couple that we had been kind of, I guess we'd adopted them as a family. I don't know if your family ever did stuff like this, but it was very common, at least in the church goers that I knew, to kind of privately adopt a family for outreach purposes. Whether it was somebody who was poor or a widow or an elderly couple or something along those lines, just to kind of have, as your family ministry, to either minister to them or whatever. And I don't think it was all nefarious. I think this was, genuine helping and doing good in some ways. So, I can't snark at every aspect of it. I'm sure for some people it was not genuine, but a lot of the cases that I saw were good. They were helpful. They were genuine. And in this case, I think it was. So we were going to do the rounds visiting kind of elderly people that we knew instead of going to Bible Grace Fellowship with the Duggars. And that was upsetting. So I said, Dad confirmed the plan. I was honestly a bit disappointed. I was all ready to tell John David about the Florida trip. Oh, well, I guess it'll wait till next week. We ate a good breakfast and then went to elderly friends. We stayed a while and just chatted. We left and got home tired. Mom and Dad were in a joking mood today, so the tiredness didn't keep us from being happy. I had to catch up on school from the Florida trip. Rats. I spent 1.5 hours watching home-sat reruns of algebra and biology. Fun, fun, fun. I also took 4 quizzes. 2 biology and 2 Bible. I did good in Bible, but I bombed one of my biology quizzes. I got my answers all flip-flopped. I made a 76%. And then I have a little angry face drawn in there. I took a break from school and played computer games for 45 minutes. John David has my World War II air combat game. This is the one that we mentioned before that I was obsessed with at this time. So I raced monster trucks and played a hot rod street racing game instead, both of which I remember quite well. I prefer flying to driving, but who cares anyways? I went to bed sad. On the way back from Florida on Tuesday, we saw a smashed 15-passenger van and camper. We prayed for them on the road and called Mr. Jim Bob with the prayer request. Mr. Jim Bob apparently looked into the accident and called us a little while ago with news about the crash. It was a homeschooled family with 10 kids from Washington State. The dad and a 10-year-old boy were killed. We prayed for them. Good night, Justin. I do remember that. I do remember coming back from a trip to Florida, which we were going and visiting Pensacola Christian College, which was kind of just, it was that and Bob Jones University, I think Patrick University, and what else am I not thinking of? King's College.
Patrick Henry?
What did I say?
You said Patrick University. Yeah, Patrick Henry
Patrick
College.
Henry College, yeah. There's King's College in New York City, I believe, and probably just a multitude of countless numbers of like smaller independent Bible colleges and stuff around the country. But Pensacola College and Bob Jones University were really well known in fundamentalist circles and in like conservative Christian circles, because Bob Jones University actually produced the HomeSat satellite that I mentioned before that I was doing. Okay. That was from BJU. And
Abeka had their own version of that, I believe.
Yeah, I think they did it with DVDs. I think it was like pre-recorded stuff that they would send out, and both obviously just produced textbooks and curriculum and stuff like that, much of which was very problematic.
Yes.
I mean, I think that Bob Jones University made interracial dating allowed during the George W. Bush administration. Crazy. And if you go and watch, there's a really good Larry King interview with Bob Jones, the fifth. It's like I can't keep track of all of them. He, Bob, whatever version or iteration of Bob Jones was running the university at that time, spoke to Larry King a little bit about the interracial dating thing and why they dropped it. And it was really just disturbing to try to see him try to speak Bibleese about this issue and just kind of failing. And it just really, it's a fundy moment to watch that, to go like, oh, that's familiar. Yep. Just kind of using the Bible to do what you want to do. Yep. And, selectively saying, no, this is really important. I would change the rules, but I don't make them.
Yeah.
So let's see. Next one. Dear Journal, well, it is April 25th, and today is sort of tough. It is 11 a.m., and I am not on the best of terms with Mom. I don't know what I did. I got up at 6:30, ran and worked out, and was on time for breakfast. When I saw Mom, she went on about how I wasn't obeying and how I ran 4 laps around our pond instead of 5 so that I could get in the shower before my brother. And then I drew 3 question marks in a row. This morning, I ran 5 and got in the shower and was on breakfast. At breakfast, what I probably meant to say, was at breakfast on time. I'm not sure what all that was about. I ate breakfast, washed my dishes, watched algebra and biology. I got back and Mom was almost yelling at everyone. For the next hour or 2, she got me in trouble for several tiny things. I feel frustrated, but I haven't blown up. I'll play it cool. And then later, Mom talked to Dad about going to a conference this weekend called Worldview Weekend, which I should note is hosted by, I believe, the American Family Association.
Oh, I don't remember for sure. Is that this similar to like Worldview Academy?
I don't know.
Okay.
Worldview Weekend was like their big, because AFA was big into culture wars and stuff like that. So it was honestly kind of scary stuff to listen to their radio station they had, because they had AFR, which was their American Family Radio program that they did, that they operated. They had several other things. I think they had like One News Now, which I think still goes, and that's like their weird kind of like faux news network / website. And I think they do like for AFR, like little news snippets on the hour. And it's all really, let's just say there's no journalistic integrity whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like Fox News they make Fox News look very, very, very legitimate. And they would have this kind of conference, because we didn't end up we ended up going to this conference, and I remember it. And the main theme is like they might have like a big speaker talk about why Muslims are really scary and bad and want to chop all of our heads off.
Yeah.
They would do something about like, I don't know, having somebody who is a missionary to indigenous peoples come up and kind of like show a bunch of pictures of indigenous peoples in the Amazon rainforest and talk about like how they kind of barged in and, told them the good news.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. There were artists and painters that were there, and it was kind of like a Comic-Con. So you would like attend the main conference, then come out into the wings, and there would be like stands with like all kinds of stuff they'd be peddling and like selling to people. I remember I really liked the painting artwork of one painter who was doing stuff that was like really tug at your heartstrings, like Christian founding fathers type, like patriotic paintings. And I don't remember his name, but he had one which was like a church steeple with a bald eagle flying around it. And it was actually really well done painting. I loved the detail and the realism of it. It was fantastic. And I bought it and had it signed. And I guarantee you that it's somewhere at my parents' house in storage. And I will probably get a hold of it at some point and ritualistically burn it or keep it. I don't know. We'll see. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But yeah. So anyway, this conference was pretty big, and it was really culture war oriented.
Yes.
You ever hear you guys hear that a lot? Like culture war, the war.
Yeah. I think that's just a huge. I mean, the whole thing of fundamentalism is a reaction to how perverse the culture is, and how you have to fight back, and you're raising all these arrows,
right?
That are just going to be soldiers for the truth, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of like if you took the Hank Hill like "wah" sound and turned it into a denomination, that would basically be this.
Yeah.
A lot of it is kind of a reaction to all this stuff. And they use the shock factor of different religions, fear of the devil, fear of Muslims, fear of this religion, this boogeyman, that boogeyman, as a real driving force for stuff. And World for You weekend was all about culture wars. So it was about like, hey guys, come here to kind of renew your vows with this terrified perspective of planet Earth.
Yeah, a toxic overreaction.
Exactly. So I went on to say the conference will have many good and famous speakers like Steve Saint, who I think that's the son of Nate Saint, who with Jim Elliot was killed by indigenous tribes in South America.
Yeah,
kind of a very famous story. And Ray Comfort, he partnered with Kirk Cameron on a lot of like tract handing out instructional videos, and like he did a lot of script writing for how to do these kind of gotcha style man on the street, gospel things. He's in a way, he's kind of like, he was sort of ahead of his time. Like a lot of his style of man on the street stuff reminds me of a lot of the YouTube era, like videos that you see now, where it's kind of man on the street, like, prove me wrong,
Yeah.
And that very kind of
Were you there?
very gotcha, cut you off before you can finish talking, kind of like trick questions and all that stuff to kind of like with people's brains.
Mm-hmm.
And it honestly, it's pretty shallow stuff. It was almost like a street magician. He could just kind of go in and like confuse people who are just like eating a sandwich or whatever.
Yeah.
And then film it and then say, check it out. Look at these lost people. Can't even argue with God logic.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought it was like, he was a little squirrely. I think my logical brain kind of struggled a little bit with some of his tactics. And Kirk Cameron was kind of his wingman. It was like Batman and Robin. Ray Comfort and Kirk Cameron doing stuff. So I said, but the conference is expensive, over $550, and we are all recovering from the Florida trip, and I kind of want to see the Duggars. I haven't been to Bible Grace Fellowship in a couple of weeks, frowny face. Next week, if we go, I want to call all of the Duggars their name plus Bob. Like Josh Bob, John Bob, Jana Bob, Jilly Bob, Jed Bob, etc. Oh well, I better go. Bye. Justin. Later. Hi again. It's still Monday. I think I'm back in speaking terms with Mom. Yahoo! With 5 exclamation points. I have a few questions for me in 7 years. And then I have a list alphabeticized of questions for myself, 7 years. It has been much more than 7 years, but these were my questions. A, are you out of college? B, are you courting? C, are you engaged? D, are you married? To who? E, do you have children? How many? And then kind of a logic branch here. If you are married, then the following questions apply. A, did you tell your wife I love you? B, are you providing well? C, what did you major in? And then D, where do you work? And then I sketched this picture of myself.
Which is surprisingly accurate.
It's like an aged version of me. I think this was like my version of that app that everybody does where they...
Are those binoculars that are around your neck? Or?
Yeah, so those are binoculars around my neck. And I look like I'm posing in front of the Grand Canyon, basically. Like I just kind of have that generic lame dad look on my face. I don't know what that is. It's just a random doodle of a cross that looks like it's a cross combined with a Bowie knife. I don't know. It's really weird looking. Truth. Maybe the sword of truth. Not sure. I doodled a lot in my diary, and so that was one of the random doodles. About these entries, though, just to kind of break down a couple things. I don't know if you had any thoughts as I was reading this stuff, but a couple things that I caught was I was very imperceptive about my relationship with my family, basically. Mm-hmm. I was very, and this was a common thing, I would be very confused about context and what was going on. And you could see me in that one entry trying to figure out like why my mom was mad or why she was upset because I had done everything by the book or everything by the rules. And I couldn't imagine what is, what is actually going on. Right. I followed the steps. I did. Yeah. I'm doing everything correct. This should equal success. But, clearly I had no real ability to read what was going on. And I just didn't have healthy communication going on in the house. And I think I was probably as much an enigma to my family looking back as they were to me. So I think a lot of times my desires and my confusion would often come off as obstinance.
Mm.
Like, hey, why are you doing this? Hey, why are you so mad? Hey, why are you, questions like that. And it's just like, what is your problem? You trying to get up in my face? You can see that I'm upset. So, but like I couldn't. I mean, I really didn't know until somebody told me that they were upset or whatever. I really didn't have a theory as to why, because it was hard for me to read between the lines on stuff. And that tripped me up a lot. You can also see I hated plans changing, which everybody does, but I remember it really bothered me. And also, most of the time, my family was always telling me I had a bad temper growing up. And, my recollection of that is that I hated losing my temper.
Mm-hmm.
I hated like losing control. And, I've since learned kind of the lingo of these things and discovered that, a lot of what I was encountering as a kid were meltdowns.
Mm-hmm.
Over situations that were overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And, just kind of, you kind of just hit that critical point where you lose it and everything just shuts down. But, the kind of the language of self-control and anger management and kind of the typical things weren't really working. And so I had like this enormous willingness and desire to stop being bad, but didn't have the tools necessary to understand myself or for other people around me to understand me and, really help me overcome stuff.
Well, and did you, if someone around you was upset and maybe just snapping at you because they were overwhelmed with something else, did you, were you thinking, oh, they're upset about this other thing and they're just like lashing out? Or was it, I am bad? Like I'm directly the cause of why they're upset in the first place?
The latter, either just confusion or assuming it was me. Or if somebody said something, this was where I really tripped up. If somebody said something in a lash out way, kind of the classic rant, you're always annoying me. You're always, why do you always do this? Like, you're literally ruining my day. I would take that to heart with 100% literalness and think, and sometimes pray and things like that. And like, my response would be like, if it was like, you're being rebellious or you're not being diligent, you'll see in my journal, I would pray every day that God would help me not be rebellious. I would just beat myself up.
Yeah.
And try to like force myself to be diligent in things and had no real context or understanding. And I will say this, like psychology in general in fundamentalist circles is not well understood at all, or mental health.
Yeah, no, it's you just don't have enough faith in God if you have anxiety or are depressed. And psychology, in my experience, was something that was actively just completely dismissed and not looked at as being science.
It was corrupted.
Yeah.
Much like Ken Ham said that, history and biology and those things were corrupted by scientists with a satanic agenda.
Yeah.
Psychology was kind of one of those things where like guys like Dr. Dobson or other people would just say like, yeah, they've hijacked the system. And there's sort of like the godly school of thought around how our brains work and our hearts work that involves a lot of satanic, Holy Spirit's in there, like all kinds of stuff explaining why we are the way that we are. And the people who are really trying to like explain things differently that's Satan's agenda.
Yeah.
And so there was really a huge shunning of healthcare when it came to your brain.
Yeah.
And how you worked. And honestly, one of the things that people talk about all the time with fundamentalism is how toxic it is to children, how toxic it is to women. One of the things that I would love to see people talk about more is how harmful it is to people who are neurodiverse.
Yeah.
Or neurodivergent, like people with depressive episodes, people with and the funny thing is that fundamentalism often breeds a whole host of mental and emotional wounds.
Yeah.
And has almost no capability of then treating those things. So what you see is a lot of worsening of things that it caused in the first place.
But like any, control framework where you have this person or people that are kind of in charge, it doesn't serve their purposes for people to be trusting science and doctors and these different things when those people and those facts actively show that these control tactics and stuff like that are actively destructive.
Yeah, that's such a good point because, and we talked about this a little bit earlier today before we even started recording, but, one of the things that I've had career experience with and exposure to is kind of the world of online selling and online marketing. And the reason for a lot of the ways that e-commerce is set up the way that it is because it's highly optimized to our brains. So like they kind of like take advantage of these little habits and quirks and things that we pay attention to and things that we're motivated by. And, they just pump web pages full of these little tricks and gimmicks. Like one thing is scarcity. Like if we think that we're running low on something, we're going to snap it up whether we need it or not, because we, naturally gravitate towards things that are running low. That's just a human trait. And so websites will hijack this by often displaying inventory and oftentimes generating that on the fly, saying there's only 5 left. And it's hard coded into the page. There's not actually 5 left. Yeah. They just want to say only 5 left.
Yeah, or they might a sense of urgency.
Exactly. Urgency. Yeah. Sometimes they'll say this sale is only available for a period of time. They want you to think you're getting a good deal. They want you to think that something's exclusive. They want you to think that something's socially acceptable. Yeah, stars and badges. It's secure. It's bright. It's motivating. It makes you feel good. There's all kinds of ways that they've broken it down and done it. And that's normal. That's business. That's how people do it. And the funny thing is that if you actually look at the way that groups like IBLP and ATI and so forth are constructed, they do the same kind of level of hacking of our motivations and our fears and the things that make us go to the same brutal efficiency as the world's best conversion marketer. And it's really quite amazing. And one of the things that you touched on was this exclusivity that this like exclusivity of intellectual property, this idea that I have the answer and no one else has the answer. That's really, really core. And one of the biggest ways that you can convince somebody that you have the answer and that they can't rely on themselves and they can't rely on anybody else is to actually make your answer kind of backwards and alien. Like, if you're hitting a hammer and a nail, if you got a hammer in your hand, you're hitting a nail, and I want to like take control over your whole process. One thing that I might do is come up to you and go, "Oh my God, you're doing that all wrong. You're doing that all wrong. That's not how you hold a hammer. That's never, give me that. That's never going to work." And then maybe I take like a fish and start hitting, the nail with a fish or something backwards. And you either think at that point that I'm ridiculous and should be ignored completely, or you could actually buy into the idea that you don't know anything.
Yeah.
I'm the one with answers, and you need to listen to me, and you can't trust yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll probably be constantly reminded that you can't trust yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that with IBLP all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Just this constant, oh, yeah, you think that this person needs a hug, but they need to be hit. Oh, yeah, normally you would leave this person because they're hurting you.
Mm-hmm.
But what you actually need to do is give them a hug and a kiss and forgive them.
And just be nicer and more accommodating
Be
because it's your
nicer,
fault.
smile more, whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, normally a person who's being put in this situation would rebel and run away or whatever. What we're going to do is have you do the opposite. And so there's sort of that idea that it's like, okay, by living in opposite land, you can't trust yourself anymore. You're completely dependent. You've kind of like ripped out this essential part of being a human, which is your discernment and your ability to think for yourself as a human being. And these cults and IBLP and everything really attack that hard.
Yeah.
Because they cannot have cohesion
Mm-hmm.
if people think for themselves.
I would love to see a Venn diagram of the overlap between people that are in these extreme religious cults, you know, not just Christian fundamentalism, but other religious cults, and buying into just the craziest conspiracy theories that you hear about. You know, we've seen definitely a spike in mainstream conspiracy theories over the last couple of years. And it's funny because it is such these tactics are such a fishnet, because they will keep in, like you said, they're going to weed out anyone who's not going to fully respect your authority, buy into what you're saying. Right. And everybody that stays because they are fully in.
Yeah, you're not going to wear a jean dress and, you know, that kind of weird looking permed hair and everything else unless you're a true believer.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to make yourself look ridiculous for a cause unless you're in, I think and you're right. There's a polarization.
Yeah.
In an extremeness in these things. And it's like, why would anybody sign up to look ridiculous? And it's honestly just part of the formula that you need some exclusivity. You need this idea of, we have a thing that sets us apart from the others.
Yeah.
And you've really got to preserve that. You got to keep brains unstable. You have to have self-confidence shaken. You have to have moral compasses, you know, going nuts. And yeah, when you do that, when you have somebody conditioned that way, yes, they are so susceptible to not just conspiracy theories, but abuse. And that's the big thing that we're seeing here is that the Duggar family, the fundamentalists in general, and not just them, but other cults, other control frameworks, it's just, this is common. And I think it all goes in the narrative and the case that you and I are making, that this stuff is not surprising in the least.
Yeah.
This isn't about who did what to who. This isn't about this person did this and then that and then this, and this unfortunate series of events led to a fluke exception and an unexpected result.
Yeah. This isn't about, you know, TLC just needs a different family.
Yeah, get a better one next time.
In this community to highlight.
Right. No. The problem is that they are giving a microphone to people who don't even think they're doing anything weird or wrong or off by living this way, where they present one face to the world and then have this classified operation and real way of working behind the scenes. To me and you, or to an outsider like me and you today, or an outsider, that looks like just straight up fraud. To the Duggar family, there's a whole complicated system of reasons and justifications for doing that is not simple fraud.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they get outraged when you tell them that they're being hypocrites. It's why they get indignant when you say you're a fraud, because they don't think they are. They have a system that's more complicated than simple fraud that justifies why they do what they do. But does it matter at the end of the day? Does it matter if you have a whole series of ways to trick yourself and everybody around you in order to rob a bank? Or does it just matter that you robbed a bank and you're a bank robber? I would say the latter. The Duggars are what they are, whether they can see it or not.
Yeah.
And they're doing damage. And the least that can be done in this situation is TLC can put the microphone down.
Yeah. Yeah. Stop like looking the other way. Stop looking the other way while you make money off of this and give a huge platform to people that are promoting so much harm. You know, and this situation isn't just playing out in this family. This situation is playing out in similar families all across the country.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, these kinds of things are such a big reason in why I left all of that, is because it was just time and time and time again. You see these insane situations unfolding all around you that you would not normally come across. Honestly, if you were in a well-adjusted community of people with, you know, without these extreme views, you know, yes, are these things potentially still going to be happening? But no, or yeah, most likely, but not at the rate and with the response.
Yes. This is the thing. This would not be an issue if this was how it was everywhere and people are just people, which is what the Duggars believe and other people believe. They believe that this is just sin nature. They think that the stuff that Josh is going through is just sin nature. It's the old man.
Same.
It's your flesh. It's whatever. And this is just what happens. And Josh, for whatever reason, God has given him a really big sin nature. And, you know, but also, you know, it's kind of like they think it's like Spider-Man, like with great power comes great responsibility or something.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, the bigger your destiny, the bigger your desire to look at CSA. I don't know. Like, it's really dumb.
Yeah. But like, how many times do you see them, you know, refer to King David or King Solomon or other people in the Bible
Flawed men.
Yeah, it's just like, well, this is what happens, and it's just these. It's not their fault, you know.
Right. You know what kills me? We're going to edit this. We're going to post it. I don't even know what the comments are going to be yet. But there's going to be people that I've never seen before, usernames I don't recognize, that are going to say, oh my gosh, this happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, everything you're saying resonates.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I've seen the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sick of it.
Yeah.
Keep the comments coming, right? Like, do it, share, post it, let other people read it. I'm sick of it because it exists.
Yeah. It's not, you know, well, you know, don't, what is this saying about like, don't judge a whole group, you know, for the wrongdoings of one, or like, oh, it's just a rotten apple. No, the whole tree's diseased.
Yeah.
Like,
it's systemic and it's on purpose.
Completely systemic. Yeah.
It's on purpose.
And you look at all the leaders of this movement.
Yeah.
You know, that just one after another, after another, after another, have their, you know, dark secrets exposed, having victims come forward, you know, and just finding out what they've perpetrated against people in their in their vicinity, and it's sickening.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I know we're going a bit on a tangent about this, but I think, we're hurt. We're passionate about
I
this.
could talk about this just particular. I mean, it's hard because, and I told, I was saying this to Justin earlier. It's hard because each of these like 5-minute tangents we go on, it's like I feel like we can barely sink into them. I could talk about each of these for 2 hours and still feel like there's more to be fleshed out and explained.
Yep. It's real. I mean, this isn't just two people going and pretending to care about something to feel important about themselves. Mm-hmm. These are real things that we've witnessed firsthand.
Yeah.
They're real to us. We see it clear as day. It's not a mystery. I'm sure that if Jim Bob was here sitting next to me, there'd be some weird ways of confusing the narrative and mm-hmm. blah, 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 but like it's cut and dried.
Yeah.
It's easier to understand than they make it, and honestly, it's more repeatable and kind of boring and kind of cliche at the mm-hmm. end of the day. This is people building nice systems that give them what they want.
Mm-hmm. At the expense of everyone around them.
It's a machine powered by trauma
mm-hmm.
that spits out power.
Yep.
For a very exclusive group. And in this case, that exclusive group is patriarchs, mm-hmm. dads, and also the leaders of the religion, of the denomination, of the cult, whatever you want to call IBLP.
Who's more
and
powerful than a pastor? Like, who is more powerful than a pastor?
Speaking of tangents, I could go on a whole tangent about the history of pastors and politics in this country, going mm-hmm. back to the 1920s. There's some really good books. The titles are escaping me right now, but there's a good book on the topic. But basically, you're like...
put it in the description.
Yeah, I'll look it up and put it in the description. But there's a really good book on the topic, which in summary is just a historical telling of a time at the turn of the century, early 1900s, when corporations, power brokers in the United States realized that the influencers of the day weren't YouTubers, they weren't mm-hmm. Instagrammers, they weren't TikTokers, they mm-hmm. weren't people on reality shows, they were pastors.
Mm-hmm.
They were pastors.
Yep.
And back in the day, the guy who said, "I'd like to thank MeUndies for sponsoring this podcast," was actually just a pastor talking about how we need to do things a certain way because Michelin company is paying for his pamphlet that he's mm-hmm. distributing to 1,000 people who are paying whatever a week. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
If it sounds like I'm making up bonkers conspiracy theories, check me on this stuff. Like, we'll put some stuff in descriptions. I know it's kind of tangential to what we're actually talking about here, but it's an interesting topic.
Yeah.
For anybody who's interested in really diving into this, training yourself to look for these things and to avoid harm mm-hmm. to yourself and those that are around you. I encourage study of this stuff and what the dynamics of manipulation of systemic,
Yeah, and you have to look at things that are promoting fear, promoting hate, promoting harm. And you have to look at those things and you have to think for yourself, not just because, oh, this person said it. It's like, is that what my values are?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, there's only so many stances you can take on this issue.
Mm-hmm.
You're either aware of it and appalled by it, aware of it and you love it,
mm-hmm.
and you think this is how it should stay, or you're unaware of it and you don't know how to break it down because you don't see it, and you also mm-hmm. don't know how to escape it because you don't see it.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. So look, whether people know about this and they love it and they think this is great, and who cares? It's a harsh world out there, and there's winners and losers and whatever they want to say. I think there's a lot of us who see these things and realize that we're vulnerable to being exploited by them, and we've had enough.
Yeah.
And we're not going to be exploited anymore. And we're going to open our mouths and tell everybody around us about it so that they can escape the traps and the tricks too. So to the people who think this is great and this is the way things should be, I'd say, game on, let's do it. I will get on my little crappy podcast and rant about you, and, your turn, do whatever you want. But, this is how it should be, is people using their voices to try to make a difference, however way they can. Whatever you can afford to do with wherever you're at in life, and whatever abilities, whatever talents, whatever communication methods, whatever you have. And for some people, it's nothing that they can spare because they're so focused on themselves and for healing, and that's okay too. But yeah, I'm in the middle of a serious 5-star rant here, so I know I'm not I'm completely off the rails as far as examining the journal, and this is probably not very fun or lighthearted or whatever, but you know what? Sometimes that's just not the vibes we're feeling.
Yeah.
And today is, especially after the Duggars stuff, after Josh and the horrible, just nightmare-inducing stuff that was in that hearing, and the disturbing outcome of that hearing, I'm really not that jokey.
Well, and again, this is very personal for us, and when you're processing through and talking about just some of the specific layers of harm that are perpetrated, then yeah, we're not going to be feeling super jovial. But I think that probably a lot of people after the bond hearing yesterday are feeling
the same way. Yeah. Yep. I can imagine. So we're probably going to go ahead and wrap up here and leave on that note. Maybe this episode will be a tad shorter than the last one, and that's okay. But just kind of wanted to share thoughts while we had them, and then hopefully get a rest. Hopefully everyone listening to this is also looking after themselves and taking the rest that they need. And, there's never any obligation to put anything, Reddit, posts, podcasts you listen to, the news, over your own health and
mental well-being.
Yeah. Sometimes the best way that you can fight the kind of shit that we're talking about is to just take a walk and
take care of yourself.
Smell what grass smells like, whatever that is. Just enjoy the blue sky and the wind, or talk to a friend. Sometimes that's the best thing that you can do, because it's honestly the antithesis of everything that we're talking about here. And the whole reason why this stuff is upsetting and bad is because it really does prevent people from enjoying the simple, boring, beautiful things in life. So that's one way that you can kind of give it to the man, so to speak, on these things, is by looking at this opportunity to be disturbed and harmed emotionally by even just the mention of the stuff that Josh Duggar has done, and instead living your life and just appreciating the freedom that you have. And to people who don't feel free, who might be stumbling across this, people who feel like, well, that's not something I can do. I can't really escape that. I'm not in a place where I can do that. I don't have an easy thing to say to that, because it's so complicated and enormous and daunting to escape. But probably the best thing that I could say is that I love you from afar, just off of the description of what you're going through and the thought of what you're going through. And the reason I feel that way is because I truly, truly believe that you deserve better than you're being treated.
Yes.
And if you can do even just the simplest act of looking inside yourself and trying to even speak one word of validation to yourself based on what I just said, that's good. Good job.
Yep.
You don't have to do more than that. It's a long haul, and sometimes the biggest step that you can take is to realize that you have more worth than you're being given when you're inside a system like this.
Yep.
So hopefully you can embrace
1000%.
that. Hopefully you can carry on to that. Sorry for monologuing so much, Julia.
You're totally fine.
I know it's something you're not used to is me ranting. It's pretty unusual.
Said with sarcasm.
Heavy amounts of sarcasm.
You listen to my rants.
I look like I do.
You.
No, I do. I love your rants. All right. We'll end there. Be well, guys, and we'll pick this up again in episode 3 after a true break. We are going to take that break.
Now.
No, man, I want to take a break. I really do. I think we just have to get this out. I don't think there's a way to really step away in light of everything that's happened without at least letting a few words out. So it's out there. Let's take a break now, but we'll be back for sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.